Just over a year ago, I released my most cutting-edge and daring project, telling you that Artie Moreno sucks. Today I'll be pushing the boundaries of the baseball video essay format, boldly going where no man has gone before, by telling you that Mike Trout is good. I wish I could look back and say that so much has changed about the Angels franchise since I covered him last year, but really, so much has stayed the same.
Yes, Artie Moreno announced he's planning to sell the Angels.
Artie is still here, for now. Anthony Rendon is still semi-retired. Shohei Ohtani is once again an MVP, and Mike Trout, the greatest baseball player of the last 10 years, is entering year 10 of a playoff drought. But we are finally at an impasse. With Ohtani set to flee MLB's capsizing Titanic, the Angels' window of contention with baseball's top two players has officially slammed shut, peaking at just 80 wins in 2018. Artie is basically begging Trout to ask him for a trade so he can get the contract off the books before hanging a big for sale sign on the Big A. And now that he's potentially played his last game as an Angel, I figured it's as good a time as ever to take a look back at Mike Trout's prime years. Regardless of what happens next, Trout has spent 13 seasons on the Angels roster, and I'm here to rank him. I'll go chronologically, summarizing each of his seasons and ranking them from best to worst as I go. The goal is examining what exactly makes Trout far and away the greatest player of a generation. His best seasons are so similar in terms of overall value, but he's brought the value in different ways as his career's progressed. He's almost robotic in his ability to evaluate and patch even the smallest flaws of his that have been exposed. Almost every time he's regressed in some way, he's made up for it by improving at something else. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's go back to where it all started.
Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim select Michael Trout.
The Angels picked Mike Trout 25th overall in the 2009 MLB Draft, out of Millville, New Jersey.
2009 MLB Draft, we can only get one kid to show up, and it's Mike Trout.
He was the one, the local Jersey kid, the kid who didn't yet know that he was the next face of baseball. Let's hope the Angels don't f this up. It's 2011. Moneyball is the best baseball movie in years, and Trout is MLB.com's top prospect. His debut wasn't quite hyped up the way that Steven Strasburg's was the year prior, and he wasn't perceived as baseball's chosen one. But while he wasn't a household name as a teenager the way Bryce Harper was, baseball people knew he had potential to be special. Trout debuted for the Angels on July 8th and picked up his first hit the very next day. Well, what do you know? The face of the analytics era of baseball, Mr. Wins Above Replacement, got his first career hit on a bunt. He'd only do that 3 more times in his entire career. Trout hit his first homer later that month. Ah, that's more like it. But he was demoted on August 1st after a rough stretch. When he was called back up after a few weeks, he homered 4 times in 7 games, but he struggled again in September. Overall, his first taste of Major League Baseball wasn't special, but nobody took stock in his struggles. After all, he was recalled at 19 and just turned 20. Only a fool would count him out so soon. There isn't too much to dive into numbers-wise, but honestly, looking at it now, he really wasn't too bad. He split games pretty evenly between the 3 outfield spots, graded out solid as a defender, and wasn't too far below average with the bat. He was on a 20-homer pace if he played a full year, and with his speed, he was already showing flashes of his future success. Regardless, this easily goes down as his worst season, and I'll rank it in the D tier on my list. It's 2012. Trouble with the Curve is the worst baseball movie in years.
That's known as Trouble with the Curve.
And Mike Trout is the best player on the planet. But his season didn't start off all peaches and cream. With a congested outfield and multiple DH options, Trout was already a long shot to make the opening day roster. And in the spring, a severe flu caused him to lose 12 pounds and limited him to just 7 spring training at-bats. He had no other choice but to show the team what he could do at AAA and hope a spot would open up. Since he initially jumped straight from AA to the majors, April of 2012 was the only month he ever spent at AAA. Since we're about to be at the end of Trout's very brief minor league career, I've got a couple of fun stats for you. He has a career AAA average of .403. In just over 1,300 minor league plate appearances, Mike Trout homered just 23 times. But he also hit 35 triples and stole over 100 bases. He also laid down 16 sack bunts in the minors. His grand total in the majors? 0. The Angels released Bobby Abreu and recalled Trout on April 28. Trout has been on the Angels roster ever since. It took him a few games to get going, but a mid-May hot streak really jump-started his season. He had 3 separate 4-hit games in June, and his OPS didn't drop below 900 after June 19th. He was still so young, but his bat was consistently great all year long. And speaking of young, happy 21st, Mike! After the game, let's hit the town to celebrate. Nothing beats Tuesday nights out in Oakland, right? Now let's see if that celebration affected your performance. 1 for 4 with a walk and 2 strikeouts. Jeez, Mike, mixing a water now and then. Trout led off in every game he played, and he was immediately the best player on the team, even better than Albert Pujols, the guy who just signed for the GDP of a small country and the best player of the previous decade. His season was better than almost anyone else's in the majors. He almost went 30-50 despite missing the first month. He was a single OBP point away from slashing 300, 400, 500, and he played elite defense in center. He also led all of baseball in weighted runs created plus. But if you ask me, Miguel Cabrera was still the best hitter in the game. Cabrera won MVP because he brought home the first Triple Crown since Yastrzemski in 1967. But this vote really sparked a debate between old school and new school thinking. Miggy was the best hitter in baseball, led the Tigers to the playoffs, and completed a significant feat that hadn't been done in decades. Trout was the second best hitter in baseball, the best base runner in baseball, and one of the best defenders in baseball. Plus, the Angels won more games than the Tigers in the regular season. The MVP debate really came down to whether Miggy's bat was so much better that it covered the massive gap in defense and base running, which, in retrospect, it clearly didn't. That's not to say that this vote was ridiculous or anything. Miggy wasn't even a bad third baseman that year looking back, and the historical significance of his season definitely deserved recognition. Hell, Trout earning 6 first-place votes over a Triple Crown winner in 2012 already represents a shift in how people began viewing value at the time. Being as young as he was, I'm sure voters also took into account that he would probably have his year soon. Looking at everything now, over a decade later, that big 3-WAR gap staring me in the eye, I still don't know for certain who I'd vote for. Scaling things back a bit and realizing that we're comparing a kid's rookie year to a sure Hall of Famer's prime really puts things into perspective. This is an easy S-tier season for Trout, the first of many, and there are arguments that it's still his best season to date. While it wasn't his best hitting season, he still led baseball in WRC+. He hasn't come close to swiping 49 bags again, and it's his only season with double-digit base running runs. 2012 is definitely his best defensive season to date in terms of DRS, UZR, and pretty much every other defensive metric out there, even though he lost Gold Glove voting to Adam Jones, who had an objectively poor defensive season. That's especially ironic considering Trout made the best play of the season in Camden Yards.
Trout at the wall, leaps up, and he makes the catch!
God, Gold Glove voting sucks. He was the most valuable speed and defense player in baseball, but he just so happened to hit 30 bombs and get on base 40% of the time. This season really reminds me of Ricky Henderson's lone MVP season, a year where Ricky won just by a few votes over Cecil Fielder, another hulking slugger from Detroit. Cecil's son Prince, protecting Miggy in the lineup, arguably directly led to his Triple Crown. So in a weird, random way, Cecil ended up taking one from the speed guys and getting one back for the Motor City in the long run.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
On to 2013. Hey, look at that. 42 is in theaters, a movie that had chubby white kids dancing off bases in Little League like they themselves were Jackie Robinson. I'm looking at you, travel ball teammate Andy. Man, Chadwick was so great in that, huh? And Harrison Ford. My god, he's such a good branch rookie. And Leo DeRoche is such an underrated baseball guy to get a bit of a spotlight. How did one guy play with Babe Ruth and then manage J.R. Richard? DeRoche also managed Jerry Royce, who went on to play 8 seasons with Mike Scioscia, who, as you know, managed Trout for the first 8 years of his career. Baseball reference is fun. Anyway, Mike Trout finished second in MVP voting again. He led the AL in walks, which boosted his on-base percentage by 33 points. And even though he played 157 games and hit even better according to league-adjusted stats, he once again lost out on the MVP to Miggy. Cabrera actually had a significantly better offensive year than his Triple Crown season. Trout only homered 27 times compared to Miggy's 44, and his defensive metrics weren't nearly as good as his rookie year. Logically, with him having an equal or slightly worse season and Cabrera having a better season, someone who voted for Cabrera before wasn't going to change their vote now. But it's pretty absurd that Trout had back-to-back 10-WAR seasons and didn't win MVP either time. Noticeably, the biggest change was how many walks he drew in the second half. which is likely due to Pujols being sidelined, giving Trout weaker protection. He increased his walk percentage compared to his rookie year by about 50% or 5 percentage points. While the power, speed, and defensive metrics weren't quite as dominant, his discipline improved enough to make his 2013 nearly identical in terms of value. I'll rank his 2013 just barely below his 2012, but it's clearly still an S-tier season. Congratulations, Mike, you've earned yourself a new contract extension, 6 years and $144 million. It'll keep you in Anaheim through 2020. Wait, Mike.
Get out! Get out! Get out! Chill! Chill, man! Chill! Get the fuck out of here!
I'm gonna say this up front. 2014 is Mike Trout's worst full season. Looking at most metrics, you can conclusively say that it ranks near the bottom both offensively and defensively, and he only stole 16 bases. Most importantly, I think it's the only time he's ever had an exploitable flaw exposed in his swing. He didn't have a sophomore slump in 2013. It took teams until Trout's third year to figure out how to beat him. He won his first MVP. Unanimously. Mike Trout led the AL in strikeouts once teams realized he couldn't touch the high fastball. We don't have StatCast data before 2015, but PitchFX shows that Trout was whiffing at well over half of the four-seamers he chased above the zone. He also whiffed at about 30% of the four-seamers in the upper third of the zone, up from 19% his previous year. Teams threw him 576 four-seamers in the upper third or higher, compared to just 457 the year before. 238 of those came when two-strike counts, compared to 162 the year before. And to top it all off, only 5 of Trout's 36 homers came in the upper third of the zone, so it wasn't really a threat to pitch him high. The only risk was catching too much of the heart of the plate, but anyone with a well-located fastball in 2014 could reliably get Trout out. This all culminated in his strikeout rate rising 7 points in 2014. I think the increase in whiffs was probably caused by greater focus on power. Josh Hamilton didn't work out for the Angels, and when Albert went down the previous year, they really had no power bats. It seems like Trout took it upon himself to increase his power output. He pulled the ball more often, hit less grounders, and had a career year in terms of isolated power. This strategy seemed to pay off, as Trout had his highest win probability added of his career. Down 2 with 2 on in the 9th versus the Rays, a walker base hit would have been fine, but this version of Trout did this.
Breaky pitch out toward left. It is gone! Walk-off style!
The Angels won 98 games, the most in baseball, and they scored the most runs in the American League. They were powered by a deep lineup that could afford to have Trout on base less if it meant that he was bringing home more runs. Besides the offense, his defensive metrics graded out worse than ever. He bulked up a bit after his rookie year, and it seemingly impacted his defense, as his DRS and UZR both fell to below average. He was still incredibly efficient on the bases, but only attempted 18 steals. Regardless, Trout was easily the best player on the best team, so it makes sense why he won MVP. But it's pretty funny that he won unanimously after only getting 11 votes across 2 better seasons. Besides his first MVP, 2014 is an especially special year for Trout. Through 2023, it's the one and only time he's made the postseason. Mike Trout's legacy has been hindered by a lack of postseason success. Obviously, his circumstances have prevented him from seeing many of these opportunities, but if he had more than one hit in his only series, I think he'd get more of a pass. I watched every pitch he saw in that series, and the Royals simply had him dominated both physically and mentally. His first at-bat resulted in a pop-out on a slow Jason Vargas fastball that caught a lot of the plate. It was just 89 miles per hour, and the same exact pitch Vargas started him off with. He missed the same exact pitch again in his second at-bat, and again his third time up. These are pitches that I think I'd get the bat on after seeing a few times. Now, they'd also probably be weak pop-outs if I touched them, but when you're the best hitter on the planet and struggling with these pitches, that's a concerning flaw. All 3 of his at-bats against Vargas immediately tipped the Royals' hand. Trout knew that he'd be seeing that fastball up and in all series long, but most guys on the Royals weren't throwing at 89. Meet Wade Davis. In an incredibly high-leverage at-bat, Trout swung through 2 straight upper 90s fastballs. Davis spiked the breaking ball, and with the base open, Trout eventually battled back and worked the walk. A walk is fine, but he missed a few hittable fastballs with the runner in scoring position, and the Angels couldn't capitalize. In the top of the 10th, with a winning run on first and Danny Duffy on the bump, Trout came up one last time. Come on, Mike, that's right there! Oh my god. He grounded into a fielder's choice, and Albert couldn't bring him in. Welp, on to game 2. Let's see who's on the bump for the Royals. Oh, Yordano Ventura. Maybe the worst possible matchup for Trout. Salvador Perez set up in the exact same spot up and in almost every time Trout was up, and even though Ventura missed his spot low twice, Trout did nothing with the middle heaters. Oh yeah, then Salvi gunned Trout by about 6 feet trying to steal. In his second at-bat of the game, Trout got ahead 3-1, then got horribly jammed on another fastball up and in for a soft lineout. I mean, he had to know that that pitch was coming. He was hunting that pitch by this point. He just couldn't get the barrel around to it. He drew a walk his third time facing Ventura, not once removing the bat from his shoulder. Leading off the ninth, in a tie ball game, Trout went out of the zone and popped up a 2-1 breaking ball. And in the 11th, Greg Holland punched him out to secure the 2-0 series lead. The Royals threw Trout a grand total of 62 pitches. 52 of those were fastballs. 21 pitches were fastballs in the upper third or higher. That's over a third of pitches of the same type in the same location. This is Ned Yost asking Trout, "We know how to beat you. What are you gonna do about it?" Trout finally did something about it in Game 3, hitting a first inning homer off of James Shields, but it was too late. The next time he came up, the Angels had already lost the lead that they would never reclaim. Trout grounded out to third, then walked in the 5th after missing another middle fastball. He hit another soft jam shot liner in the 7th, and in the 9th, he struck out on 3 pitches to end an absolutely dreadful series. This was maddening to watch. He got so many good pitches to hit, so many fastballs in the zone that most elite hitters will only see once or twice per game. Trout knew where he was going to be attacked after his first at-bat or two, and still couldn't do a thing about it. For the first and really only time in his entire life, Mike Trout was exposed. It just so happened to be during the most important moments of his career. It's 2015. Welcome to the StatCast era. Trout fixed a lot of issues in 2015. He got his strikeouts under control, improved his walk rate, and further improved his power. He whiffed a lot less on the high four-seamer and actually did some decent damage on the pitch. Quick editor's note, I need you to keep looking at these numbers. It didn't hit me until I put this graphic together. This guy won MVP unanimously, then went from struggling on high fastballs to an elite high fastball hitter in one single offseason. Improving this much, this quickly at anything when you're already the best in the world is just not human. This one pretty meager graphic explains precisely what makes Mike Trout Mike Trout. Anyway, please subscribe. Back to the video. Thanks. Locating the fastball up and in on the corner was still the best way to get him out, but he punished you if you left it out over the plate, making it a far riskier pitch to throw. Thanks to these improvements, he reached the 40 homer threshold for the first time, and StatCast gave us an accurate way to measure all 40. To nobody's surprise, Trout was in the top percent of the league in terms of exit velo, hard hit percentage, and expected stats. 5 of his homers traveled over 440 feet. Including this 477-foot bomb at Coors. Good for the 3rd longest homer of the year behind Pedro Alvarez and Michael A. Taylor? The only guy who definitely hit better than Trout in 2015 was his NL counterpart, Bryce Harper. Harper's 2015 sparked a debate about which future Hall of Famer is better, and he did have a better season in 2015, getting on base 46% of the time and finishing with the highest WRC plus since Bonds in 04. Leading to a unanimous MVP season. On the American League side of things, Trout lost out to everyone's favorite future Yankee, Josh Donaldson. I'd rank Trout's 2015 between his 2014 and 2013, which makes it even more bizarre that he lost another MVP during a better season. The Jays won the East and the Angels missed the playoffs. If it were the other way around, I'm sure Trout would have won the vote. The Angels missed out on a wild card by just a single game, and they had plenty of chances to pick up a few more during their brutal 11-26 stretch from late July through August. Trout played slightly below his standard during this stretch, but he certainly wasn't the problem. And if this video also covered the problems of this era of the Angels, it would be precisely 22 minutes and 57 seconds longer. Anyway, even though he missed out on the league MVP, Trout won his 2nd consecutive All-Star MVP award. Wait, did I forget to mention that he won the All-Star MVP in 2014 too?
I'm picking the vet.
And the mom's reaction is priceless.
Ah yes, 2016, a year of no athletic, cultural, or political significance whatsoever. Trout basically rewinded and played back his 2013 season again, but this time, he won the MVP. Baseball Savant is telling me that while Trout's range and center was below average, his arm was actually one of the best in baseball. And this is exactly the type of thing I'm talking about. Going into 2016, he must have focused on making his arm into an asset, and lo and behold, now it was. He also further improved his hitting. The only hitter even in his ballpark was Big Papi, who could barely run by this point and probably traveled on some road trips without his glove. Trout got on base 44% of the time in 2016, leading all of baseball in walks, on-base percentage, runs scored, and WRC+. Which reminds me, how's the Harper versus Trout debate going? Oh, wow. Did I mention that Trout stole 30 bases again? It was as balanced a season as he'd had in a while. I'd probably put it between his 2012 and 2013 seasons. And even though he won MVP, he didn't come close to a unanimous finish this time. Probably because the Angels were awful. Johnny Giavotella, Gregorio Petit, Shane Robinson, Daniel Nava,
Psycho Mantis, second floor basement,
and Tim Lincecum?
What are you talking about?
Hey, look at that. He played in 159 games, meaning he's only missed 19 games since the day he was recalled in 2012. We got a regular Iron Man on our hands. It's 2017. Kendall Jenner did that funny Pepsi ad, ending police brutality once and for all.
This is important.
And Mike Trout got better. Wait, he what? No way, how? How is that even possible? It's May 28th, Mike Trout is on pace to hit 56 homers, steal 32 bags, and finish with 11.6 FWAR. He's got a WRC plus of 209 and an OPS over 1200. You're probably thinking, he must have got off to a pretty lucky stretch. Well, maybe? His average on balls in play is 364, which is lower than 3 of his last 5 seasons. He's homering on 32% of fly balls, which seems pretty unsustainable, but with this new wacky baseball, anything's possible. Let's see if he can sustain this ridiculous pace.
Left wrist. Trout reached down and grabbed it.
Look at that. He definitely did something. Look at the look on his face.
Trout missed 39 games, and the insane 2-month stretch he began his year on didn't continue. He was still Mike Trout, but he played at about the average Mike Trout pace the rest of the way. Trout still qualified, leading MLB in OPS and OPS+, and even walking more than he struck out, but the games he missed pushed him to 4th in MVP voting. It was the first time in his career he wasn't top 2. Jose Altuve won, and I'm not even going to touch that can of worms, but if Trout played at normal Mike Trout pace in those 40 games he missed, he almost certainly would have won his 3rd MVP. And he was so locked in early on that we could have seen a Bonds-esque season from Trout. I really don't think it would have shocked anyone if Trout really did take the next step and become a 90s Barry Bonds level hitter. Good thing Mike Trout never got hurt again. Okay, this is it. I found it. I think 2018 is Mike Trout at his very best. In 2018, Mike Trout put up career highs in walks, on-base percentage, OPS, OPS+, outs above average, and fielding run value. He also hit 39 homers, stole 24 of 26 bases, and led baseball in intentional walks. His 11 FWAR pace would have been a career high, but a wrist injury sidelined him for 3 weeks in August, limiting him to 140 games. Despite all of that, Trout didn't win MVP. And I don't think there's even an argument that he deserved it this time. Looking back, there's a reasonable argument for him winning MVP in each of his first 5 seasons, and he definitely would have won 2017 if he stayed healthy. The fact that his best season ever is the one full season where I can say Mike Trout didn't deserve MVP proves just how good Mookie Betts was in 2018. Mookie's 2018 was basically a combination of Trout's offense in 2018 and Trout's defense from 2012. Trout was a great defender in 2018, but Betts was one of the best, and his bat and base running were about equivalent. Mookie's team also won 28 more games than Trout's, so there was really no question who was going to win the award. Trout's 2018 actually reminds me a lot of Harper's 2015, down to the identical OBP and OPS+. Harper's 2015 is considered one of the best seasons since Bonds, while Trout's 2018 is largely overlooked. This was pretty much expected from Trout by this point. Trout was in the midst of a generational run. Similarity scores are a concept devised by Bill James which compare players based on how close they are in counting stats. The closer to 1,000, the more similar. Baseball Reference's version of this measure says that the 5 most similar players to Trout through age 26 are Frank Robinson, Ken Griffey Jr., Mickey Mantle, Hank Aaron, and Miguel Cabrera. And he still couldn't pull the Angels even above 500. This sport is kinda stupid, huh? Regardless of how awful their track record was, Trout was at the peak of his abilities, and he chose to cash in for generational wealth. It's easy for us, sitting on our couches, to look at the tragic waste of Mike Trout's prime and blame it on Mike Trout. He should have just waited till free agency. He shouldn't have signed either extension. He shouldn't have sold his soul. None of us will ever sniff this type of money, and if ever faced with the opportunity to grant the entire future of my bloodline and all of my friends and family with lifelong security, I'm probably not risking that for a better chance to win a game. It sucks for fans, it sucks for the sport as a whole, but Mike Trout is not to blame. Every single athlete is one freak play away from losing their ability, identity, and value. After all, that's the ultimate tragedy of sports. It's 2019, and there is certainly no looming, generation-defining global event on the horizon. I like this year. Apparently, so did Mike Trout. This was the year that Trout played as a slugger. He put up a career-high pull rate, fly ball rate, and sweet spot percentage, while only hitting the ball into the ground 25% of the time. It resulted in a career-high 45 big flies despite missing most of September. This was a definite shift from his most balanced years, and he's been this type of hitter pretty much ever since. Oh yeah, he also stopped running. Trout swiped his 11th bag of the year on August 31st, becoming the youngest member of the 200-200 club. He has attempted just 7 steals since that day. The 2019 juiced ball directly led to career seasons from Christian Yelich, Cody Bellinger, Alex Bregman, Anthony Rendon, and plenty of others. But Trout was still the best hitter in baseball. He just beat out Bregman in the MVP race, taking home his 3rd and, as we stand, final MVP. This one could have gone either way, but knowing what we know now about the juiced ball and the Astros' extracurricular activities, I'm glad Trout took this one home. I'm not quite sure where to rank this year, but I think it slots in pretty nicely between his 2014 and 2013 seasons. I think 2014 is still significantly weaker than all of his other healthy peak years. Trout missed time in 2019, didn't play great defense, and decreased his stolen base value, but he put up as good a hitting season as ever. The ultra-juiced ball run environment makes his offense slightly less valuable, so I'll put it behind his other tippy-top seasons. This video is titled something along the lines of Mike Trout's prime is over. Now, this isn't necessarily accurate. He is so good that he could put up another 9 worse season next year, but since 2019, he has not produced a single full season. I don't know where to pinpoint when he became injury prone, but that is what he is right now. It's also crazy that I'm talking this way about someone who's generated the 29th most position player F4 in the sport since 2020, despite playing over 100 games less than all but one player ahead of him. I'm not gonna get quite as in depth with his remaining seasons, because we all know what's going on. Trout had a good shortened 2020, finishing 5th in MVP, but I don't believe in that fake year. He began 2021 with one of, if not the, best months of his entire career. His numbers were definitely not sustainable, but it didn't even matter, since he didn't play a game after May 17th. He was initially diagnosed with a minor calf strain, but it was later revealed to be a pretty serious tear. Manager Joe Madden considered moving Trout to a corner outfield spot for 2022, but Trout wanted to stay in center, and I understand it. He's definitely still good enough to field a position, and he thinks playing center gives his team the best chance to win. So he stayed in center, and got hurt again. He missed just over a month with a pretty scary sounding back issue, and still hit 40 bombs. Trout's 2022 was a lot like his 2019, except with 15 games less, a lot fewer walks, and a lot more strikeouts. His strikeout rate was even higher than it was in 2014, and his walk rate was his lowest since his rookie season. It's not like Trout fell off, but he was no longer the unquestioned best player. Now mortal, he finished 8th in MVP voting in his abridged campaign. That brings us to this year. Trout played in the WBC for the first time as the Team USA captain, and for the first time since the 2014 ALDS, the world saw Mike Trout playing to win. It was sort of a chance at redemption. If Trout led Team USA to a title, the narrative would have quickly become about getting Trout more playoff opportunities rather than how he missed his only opportunity. And he did pretty well overall, but most people are only going to remember his final at-bat.
Trout strikes out swinging!
Including the World Baseball Classic, Trout has played in 6 playoff games. He has now struck out to end 3 of them. At least this time it was Pico Ohtani and not Greg Holland. In the regular season this year, Trout played just 1 game after breaking a hamate bone on the 4th of July. But before then, he was having the worst season of his career. His strikeout rate approached 30%, but his ISO was the lowest since 2011. He's simply no longer a god. It's easy to be pessimistic about his future, but I want to end this video with some positivity. Mike Trout is still a good center fielder, still makes some of the best contact in baseball, and still has an elite eye. He broke his hamate bone on a swing this year, but the only serious lower body injury he's ever sustained was that calf tear. His only other serious injuries in general are his thumb and his back, which seemingly haven't had lingering effects. If he ends up being traded to a team with modern medicine, my money's on the Phillies. He's gonna have more DH games, and maybe even move to a corner outfield spot, which could save his body long term. And if he's healthy with some lineup protection, I think he'll be able to get back to the craft of hitting. I'm not gonna bet against Mike Trout bouncing back. Even though his prime may be over, and even though his peak was wasted, he will continue doing special things over these next 7 years. And hopefully, he'll finally get another shot to win it all.